Hello again, everybody. It is time for another edition of the Silver Bullets podcast. I am Michael Citro.
And I'm Chip Minnich.
And Chip, been a couple weeks since we've last spoken. Of course, we did our Sleepers show, and I think that we covered that pretty well. One guy, though, that we didn't talk about as a sleeper is a guy who's been around a long time. It's Cameron Babb, and been hearing good things about him.
Yeah, I mean, and that's when you have had the setbacks that Cameron Babb has had. It is really, rewarding to see, that his positive attitude and hard work are paying off so far.
Yeah, so a little belated sleeper there for you, a little bonus sleeper for this week as we close the book on last week, and we'll move on to this week. Chip, how you been?
I'm good. If anything, I can say that the weather here in Ohio, and again, if you, I might be jinxing it, but it's actually what you would consider a beautiful spring day. It's in the 60s. The blue skies, sun is shining, all that kind of good stuff. So it was a beautiful day. How about you?
Cool. I think you have better weather than we do right now. We're a little drizzly and overcast and a little chilly, so like low 60s.
Okay.
So, every now and then you get a little bit better weather than we do.
Every now and then.
Yes. So why don't we dive into this week's topics, just some of the stuff that's happened since you and I last spoke. We'll start with the bad stuff, I guess. We'll get that out of the way. Marcus Hooker got picked up on an OVI charge and had been suspended from the program. He'll be disciplined. This is technically a second offense because I think he had had something similar after signing, but maybe before reporting to Ohio State as a freshman. So they've already had the conversations with Marcus Hooker that you don't want to have more than once. So what do you think the long-term effect of this is for Marcus Hooker, a guy who really needed to have a good spring to kind of reestablish himself?
Really good question, Michael. I mean, as you said, this is, we're kind of truly in a gray area here, and no pun intended, is that, as you said, he had a similar incident prior to reporting to campus. So there's a lot of speculation. All right, is this being treated differently because the first time that this took place, he was not yet on campus. It was also when Urban Meyer was still the head coach. It was before Ryan Day became the head coach. So a lot of speculation, is this being treated as he's down to his final chance or opportunity? Is Ryan Day going to say enough's enough and give him the boot? I mean, I really don't know how to answer it because he's been indefinitely suspended. I think the likelihood is that he will be back, but I have a feeling he is not only going to be facing some kind of in-game suspension, which is going to, maybe be considered very, very lenient by certain aspects of society. But I also believe that if he comes back, that he is going to have to deal with some kind of punishment out of the eye of the fans, and I certainly do not believe that those are going to be enjoyable. I'm sure Coach Mick can think of some very devilish and ghoulish punishments that I'm sure will not be pleasant to earn back the trust of the Ohio State coaching staff.
Yeah, my gut feeling is that there's going to be some behind-the-scenes stuff that he'll have to work on before he can get back on the field. Whether that's committing to doing some extra stuff for the program, for maybe some charity work, that kind of stuff. Maybe go through some kind of program or counseling. So there's all of that. But my gut also says maybe a 2 or 3 game suspension, which, normal years you would go, okay, big deal. They're going to play a couple MAC teams. But, I think they start the season, with a pretty strong opponent in Minnesota, and so I don't think this is one of those slap on the wrists if you get a couple games to start the season.
I completely agree. I certainly believe that there's going to be some kind of not only, like I said, speculation is suspension, and you're right. I mean, the Ohio State season, in years past, let's face it, like a lot of the first couple games are kind of like, oh, okay, what a big deal. But Ohio State comes out strong right out of the gate. I mean,
Minnesota and Oregon, yeah, and then Tulsa.
That's tough. Yeah. Those are tough games. So I think if let's just, again, it's not really fair to speculate as to how many,
right?
But I have a feeling that if I agree completely with what you said a moment ago, that I think if there is some kind of game suspensions as well as some kind of punishment, getting to know the stadium steps as well as other things that Coach Mick could think of, I think that some kind of form of counseling, some kind of charity work, some kind of public service announcement, because this is troubling behavior. I would be the last person in the world to say that there have not been times in Chip Minnich's life where I have gotten behind the wheel of a car, and when I have come home, before I was married, like kind of like, oh, okay, like in the next day, like, man, that was dumb. And then even after I was married, my wife to say to me, boy, Chip, that was really dumb. And nowadays it's the kind of thing where when Mrs. Minnich and I are out, I will also, this is kind of free advertising. I will also say that we take advantage of services like Uber and Lyft. And I think that's the kind of thing that Marcus Hooker needs to avail himself of when those kind of situations come around.
Indeed. And Uber and Lyft, you can get a hold of us if you want to sponsor the podcast. We'll gladly we'll talk to you offline about that. But yeah, we don't know anything going into this. We're not trying to start any rumors here. I'm just going with my gut. It's just a gut feeling that it'll be a game or two at least. And again, those are pretty big games for Ohio State, at Minnesota and home against Oregon. If it's two, even if it's just one, it's a pretty decent punishment to miss Big Ten games that aren't against like Rutgers or Maryland. The also Rans. You're going to be playing decent team right off the bat on the road. So it's not like one of those deals where it just so happened that the Chase Young suspension, for example, just happened to be during a time when it was a soft part of the schedule coming up, and everybody was like, oh yeah, that big deal. It's like, well, it could have easily come at the end of the season against Michigan. If it just happened, the timing had been different. So it just so happened that it wasn't. So this again, we're not speculating. This is just me saying, if I had to guess as to what maybe Ryan Day might be thinking, this is what I think he might be thinking. And just because we have that insiders board doesn't mean I'm going to divulge anything that's there. Not that there's anything on this particular topic there, but I just want to make that clear that we're not saying stuff and people like taking it and running with it, because we do have that Ask the Insiders board that people frequent, and we are not privy to that information at this time. I don't even know if those decisions have been made. So don't take this and run. Don't take this as a rumor. This is just me spouting off the top of my head what I think maybe Ryan Day might be thinking, and that's it's as good or bad a guess as anybody can make, I guess.
And just something to kind of keep in mind here, and I'm not trying to minimize the severity of Marcus Hooker's poor decision. We are recording this in the middle of March, and bad decisions are bad decisions no matter when they are made. Mm-hmm. However, that we're speculating about a possible game suspension or two that he would not have to serve for. I mean, we're talking 6 months from now. I mean, like, the season is 6 months away. So, I mean, you're right. Talking, I mean, like the I agree completely that missing games at any point is a severe punishment, but it's going to even magnify how poor of a decision this was. Like, man, you're still paying the price, paying the penalty for something that you did 6 months ago, potentially.
Right. But I'm sure, just based on Ryan Day and the way he comports himself, those discussions, whatever they might be, have either taken place or are scheduled for a time to take place. And so this won't come as a surprise to Marcus Hooker. It might come as a surprise to the fans who aren't, they're not going to come out and say what that punishment is, but you come out on opening day and Marcus Hooker didn't dress for the game or travel to Minnesota, then you'll know that was part of the original punishment. I mean, he's not going to say, Marcus, I'm going to decide that in, on September 1st. He's already making that decision now, and that will be communicated to the player, because if nothing else, Ryan Day communicates pretty well with his players.
Agreed. And as you said, with Ohio State, we're not privy to the decision process in terms of what punishment is going to be handed out. It is unfortunate for Marcus Hooker in the sense that spring football did just begin, and we all know that the Ohio State secondary is, out of the entire defensive unit, is the one area or unit that is being most heavily scrutinized, the one that is under the microscope the most, so to speak. And the opportunity to impress and possibly put yourself in position to emerge as a starter, because we don't know, are they going to stick with the one safety? Are they going to go to the two? That Marcus Hooker, I mean, he put himself with this bad decision. He really put himself behind in the eyes of the coaching staff who are doing the evaluation right now.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I think it's just worth mentioning. He's a young man. Young people make mistakes. It's unfortunate that this is a particular mistake he's made more than once, that he didn't learn from it the first time to not do it again. But you do make bad decisions, and I'm sure he'll use this as an opportunity to, learn from it. Hopefully this time the message will sink in, and because you don't want him putting himself or others at risk, and I'm sure that's been drilled into him by now. And at the same time, I'm always a person who says, hey, let's see how he responds. Let's see if he learns from the mistakes. Let's see if he can overcome this. I'm certainly not one of these people you see on social media who says, just cut him. It's like people are so quick to just make that snap judgment and to leave no room for redemption. I love a good redemption story, Chip. So I'm here for the Marcus Hooker redemption story.
I'm with you. I'm all for redemption myself.
All right. Some other, not really bad news per se, but kind of sad news in a way. Danny Vanatsky has decided he is going to be finished playing football. He will not be back with the Buckeyes, walk-on quarterback. You never hear anything bad spoken about Danny Vanatsky, and so it's unfortunate. It's one fewer quarterback on the field for Ohio State for practices, but we will wish that young man well in his future, and as they say, he'll be going pro in something other than sports.
And if you have not had the opportunity, or our listeners have not had the opportunity, Tom Orr on the Morning Scoop had Danny Vanatsky on, and it was a tremendous episode. I know that I'm sounding like a typical corporate shill here, for all these podcasts, these amazing podcasts that we have for Buckeye Scoop. But it really was to hear Tom speak with Danny Vanatsky about what it's like behind the scenes, get an idea as to what the life of a walk-on quarterback has been like at Ohio State. I think, Danny Vanatsky, like you said, I think he's got a bright future no matter what direction his life takes. It was just very, very informative and enjoyable to listen to some of the different experiences and stories that he had while he was a walk-on quarterback for Ohio State.
Yeah, and we don't, you and I, Chip, we've never been on Tom's show, so we don't have any particular, loyalty to Tom about the Morning Scoop.
I know. I'm like I said, it's like we promote the Morning Scoop. We get nothing out of it. We haven't even gotten a thanks for your promotion on your show. But yeah, I mean, seriously, Tom, if you're listening, give Michael or me a call, because we'd love to be on your show sometime.
maybe if we could think of something to offer Tom and his listeners, maybe then we'll be on.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get to work on that.
All right. Chip, before we get to, one of our conversations that you and I decided we were going to have was to talk about some of the Buckeyes in the NFL and where they're going, because there's been a lot of movement in recent days. But one of the things that we have just found out is that the numbers have been released. The new roster is out. So we have new names and numbers on the team now. And we can go through these if you want. But just to see, I'm just going to ask you if any of these numbers are surprising to you, or if you don't like some of them, or you particularly like some of them. But let's go through them real quick. Jane Ballard will be wearing 10. Amika Egbuka, I'm tripping over my tongue, 12. Kyle McCord, 14. Marvin Harrison Jr., 18. Pryor will be wearing 21. Jansen Dunn will be wearing 24. Reed Carrico, 28. Jesse Mirko, 29. Burke will be wearing 29. Henderson, 32. Sawyer, 33. Mikowski, 65. Christman, 71. Hart, 81. And Williams, 91. Who sticks out to you? What's a number you like? What's a number you don't like among the new ones?
I wouldn't say necessarily about disliking per se. I am pleasantly surprised. I'm gonna couch it this way: is both Evan Pryor at 21, Travion Henderson at 32, for kind of going against what seems to be a common trend in recent years for like the single digit, right?
Mm-hmm,
to be wearing the single digit, as Tony Gerdeman said or wrote weeks ago, when I guess you could say that when a lot of these young men enrolled early for winter conditioning, that it seemed as though that both Pryor and Henderson were kind of getting back to the old school tradition of running backs, wearing running back style numbers, like Travion Henderson, with that 32. Probably,
yeah.
That's kind of, along those lines. I guess if there's a surprise, and this is just based on what I thought I had seen of Kyle McCord when he was in high school, is that I want to say that Kyle McCord, I know I just talked about the single digits. I thought that Kyle McCord wore number 6. So I know that that's not available to him, but the fact that he didn't try and angle potentially for like another single digit number if there was one, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's a minor thing. Who's to say, for example, sometimes, some of these players, when the opportunity presents itself to go and get a single digit or a certain number, they might do that maybe like their sophomore year or whatever. But I guess those are my first impressions. But I'm excited. I guess if I had to say that there's a player that I'm excited to see just because of all the hype, is Jack Sawyer at number 33, seeing what kind of reputation he builds for himself with that number.
Yeah, the reason I asked you that question is because I looked at those running back numbers like you did, and I'm saying these are traditional running back numbers. You got an Eric Metcalf number out there. You got all of the really top-notch running backs in the 70s wore 32 and into the 80s. Just a very traditional running back NFL number. So I really like those. I like the 14 from McCord. I kind of like the 18 for Harrison Jr., although 88 would have been my favorite for him because that's the number his dad wore. And we just don't see the 80s anymore for the receivers. You see them in tight ends. All of the receivers nowadays they're single digits and teens. You don't get the 80s anymore. But one I'm disappointed in is I don't want to see a punter wearing 29, Chip.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, the Jesse Mirko era is upon us. Regardless, I will say, I will say what I always enjoy, and I freely admit it just kind of speaks to, just my level of enthusiasm and excitement that I have about spring football is when these new numbers are revealed. And again, I always kind of it's like, okay, are these going to be the numbers in the fall? Because sometimes players change their mind between now and the fall, sometimes during the season. Like Craig Young has flopped and flip-flopped between, like wearing number 25 now. I think he's wearing number 15 now, like those kind of things. The reason why I get excited about this kind of information is, if anything, it gives me ample opportunity to kind of try and memorize and train my eyes to look for certain numbers on special teams, and when the games actually begin to there's Jack Sawyer, at number 33, or there's Travion Henderson, he's wearing number 32. So that being the case, I can understand your disappointment about Jesse Mirko getting 29. Because we were just talking about great NFL players. Eric Dickerson was the consummate 29. So maybe you have a different, maybe you have a different memory of the number 29. But that to me was kind of who I always associated the number 29 with.
No, I was starting to like the punters wearing the high numbers. I'm starting to get into that. Drew Chrisman wore 91, and I realized Marvin Harrison couldn't wear 88 because Jeremy Ruckert came back this year for another year, and we'll still have that 88. But when you and I grew up, all the receivers were in numbers in the 80s, pretty much. In college there were still some single digits. There were ones and twos. I remember Mike Lanise and Chris Carter were 1 and 2, I believe, and you had the fours. Obviously, 4 was a big number for Ohio State with Santonio Holmes and guys like that. But, we grew up in an era where everybody wore, there was 85 and 80 and 81 and 88. Those were wide receiver numbers. Now, those are tight end numbers or even defensive lineman numbers.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like it's just a different time where, like I don't want to call it the fad, but, like the idea, kind of what I said a few moments ago, that certain players kind of, okay, well, I really want to wear the single digit. I mean, we really don't know in the fall as to who's going to get the treasured 0 number, because that's now a new tradition at Ohio State with the honoring of the Bill Willis jersey.
Block O.
I mean, the Block O, right.
Yeah.
Who gets that? And, the likelihood of it being a lineman again, considering Bill Willis was a lineman, that's kind of, where I think, it will be. But yeah, it's always fascinating.
I think Haskell Garrett.
Okay.
Good candidate
a lot of
for
pressure.
0. Yeah.
I agree. I believe he's probably the most likely candidate, but again, you never know. Like we were talking Coach Day in the decision-making process, we never know.
That's true. But yeah, you've got, on that defensive line, you have Jerron Cage was 86 and Cormonte Hamilton was 83. And that's just, those guys used to wear 50s, numbers in the 50s.
Right.
You're right. Those nose tackles were like 59 and, 53 and stuff like that. But, times change and, the trend is what it is. So, we'll have to deal with it. The whole thing with Jesse Mirko being 29, it's not necessarily the 29 itself. It's just like, it's just not a punter number to me.
I agree. I understand. Like I said, it's like it's one of these things where it's like you kind of get used to a certain I guess you could say like the last few years with like the specialists wearing the 90s. So yeah, I understand
they've been wearing the
that.
90s, and then traditionally they would wear like a single digit number or like something like an 11.
Right.
Something in the teens maybe. But yeah, 29 seems odd. But comes from the Aussie rules football. Maybe that was his number playing Aussie rules football or something. It's hard to say.
Who knows?
Plus, if you're a punter at Ohio State, you're just taking the numbers that are left over at this point. You're not getting the first pick. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I just wonder how that whole conversation takes place. During the recruiting process. I mean, in terms of, all right, obviously you're looking at and. Jack Sawyer or Travion Henderson are kind of like the highest rated of the income, Emeka Ibuka and, all these talented players, like you said, no disrespect to Jesse Mirko, but he wasn't necessarily, like the fevered pitch of the recruiting battle. So it just kind of makes me wonder when those conversations take place, like, if you're going to be a Buckeye, what number do you want? Is it available? Those kind of things. And like you said, Jesse Mirko might be like, all right, this is what you're looking at, kid. This is what, to choose from.
Yeah. And now nobody has the offensive number 17 that Danny Vanatsky vacated either.
That's right. Well, right now, 17, if memory serves, Bryson Shaw.
Right. On the defensive side.
On the defensive side. But yeah, you're right. I mean, like it's one of these things where, like when it comes to, like on the offensive side, certain numbers are available. Like I think it would be raising some eyebrows if an offensive player came in and said, "Hey, I want number 1." Kind of, kind of along the lines of what we completely different set of circumstances. But I remember when Noah Potter started rocking the number 97 after so many years of the Bosa brothers. We were kind of like, wow, that's kind of, an interesting choice. So, yeah, I think the jerseys themselves, like who wears what, like there's a lot of tradition and prestige associated with most of the numbers in Ohio State football history. So,
right. Like famously, you and I could go back and remember the fervor with which Andy Katzenmoyer was going to be wearing number 45. And the buzz about that is like, oh wow, this is a 45. I mean, he's wearing Archie's number.
Oh yeah, I mean, because that was the kind of thing where when you're talking about not only the kind of caliber of person that Archie Griffin is, but the fact that you're talking the only 2-time Heisman winner. It was an unspoken rule that, all right, well, nobody's going to wear number 45 again. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, like, I remember that was, again, kind of like, man, I can't believe they're going to actually let Katzenmoyer wear that. Fortunately for Andy Katzenmoyer, he represented himself pretty well wearing the jersey.
He really did. Now, I think Jack Sawyer has a big pair of football cleats to fill. 33 has been a number that's been worn by some of the greats. I have still my Laurinaitis jersey. It's fallen apart, but I still have my James Laurinaitis jersey. And the 33 has been worn by some of the greats, so I'm anxious to see what he brings to that number and how he represents it.
Yeah, who's to say? Maybe that's the reason why he wanted it. Maybe because Laurinaitis wore it.
Yeah, you got to make plays when you're wearing 33. I think that's kind of the rule. If you wear a double number, you got to make plays.
I think you got to make plays no matter what number you're wearing.
Well, yeah, at Ohio State you do, but I mean you especially have to stand out if you get the double numbers. Like, you've seen the one-handed catches from Jeremy Ruckert. That's he's representing the double 8 really well. Remember Lynn Swan used to do that. So we've got you gotta represent. But yeah, I love it. 32 to have a 32 in the backfield would be great. And at 21, of course, who knows what those guys will end up wearing when they're, been in the program a couple of years and some other numbers become available.
Precisely. Who knows? Like I said, it's like but it's good to kind of start to make those associations now.
Yeah.
Because with the spring game, in April 17th, it's nice to kind of start to be on the lookout for, Henderson at 32, Pryor at 21, Sawyer at 33, etc.
Yeah, when those upperclassmen change numbers, it always takes me a couple games. It's like, wait, oh yeah, that's Chris Olave now. Number 2 is Chris Olave.
Right. Well, I guess if there was any upperclassman who deserved to get a different number years ago, just because it was just seeming like, how could you not, with Seven Banks getting the number 7?
Oh yeah, that should have been like we're not even going to ask. We're just going to take this number away from whoever has it. Give it to him. It's his name. Got to wear it. All right. So anything else you want to remark upon about the jersey numbers? Are we good?
No, I think that's. I mean, if anything, like I said, it's a good thing to start making those associations now with those freshmen. Because hopefully we'll start to see those young men making plays for Ohio State on the football field this coming fall.
Exactly. All right, Chip, you and I are going to talk about the NFL, but we're also going to talk about Ohio State because we're going to be talking about Ohio State players in the NFL. We'll get to that discussion right after this. And we're back. Chip, let's talk a little bit about Buckeyes in the league, the National Football League. Silly season is upon us. There's a lot of movement. When you and I, back in the dark ages, when we were kids, your team was pretty much your team every year. You had some new rookies. Maybe you'd trade every now and then, but mostly your team was your team. Nowadays, the offseason means you can dump half your squad, pick up people from all over the league. Anything goes.
You're right. I mean, I do remember, there was, it's one of these things where, NFL free agency was pretty much it was just kind of like a legend. It was a rumor. There were, the only way that players moved from team to team is if there was a trade, or if they were cut. I mean, there wasn't any kind of NFL free agency. The NFL started in 1989 with, if you remember, and we're kind of looking back, that vaunted Plan B free agency, where it was basically you could remember. I knew you would remember it.
Yep.
With the idea that you could protect so many players on your team and then everyone else. And so, let's face it, this was the kind of thing where it had pretty much there was no salary cap then, so it was like you're pretty much saying like like you can take these other guys, like we don't really care. And so even then there was kind of restricted movement. It wasn't as though like you saw big names like you do nowadays, where teams, either for financial considerations or changes in coaching or front office philosophies, or both, that kind of lead teams to being able to, like you said, make over their complete roster, with free agents.
Yeah, so there's a lot of Buckeyes on the move, and some of these are outstanding players that you would go, why would the team not want to keep this player? But, this is just the way the NFL is now. Everybody, even the very good players, often move around and don't spend their whole career with one team anymore. So it's, when you see Tom Brady wearing another uniform, you know that there's nothing sacred in the NFL anymore. Everybody moves around.
Well, exactly. I mean, the circumstances of Tom Brady moving last season from New England to Tampa Bay, I mean, it obviously worked out extremely well for he and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing where you just have to kind of get used to the fact that your favorite player may not necessarily be a lifer, for your favorite NFL team.
Yep. Be careful when you buy those jerseys, folks, to buy the kind with the removable nameplates. Oh, man. It's let's start with the punter, since we were talking about Jesse Mirko earlier. Cam Johnston, no longer with the Philadelphia Eagles, has signed a 3-year deal with the Houston Texans. This is a good punter, Chip. I'm not sure a move to Houston is what I would have done, but maybe that's where the best deal was for Cam Johnston.
I think you hit it right on the head, Michael. I think anyone who has been following anything at all to do with the NFL realizes the Houston Texans are certainly not a well-run organization at the moment. So I think this was an opportunity financially for Cameron Johnston to, let's just say, makes, secure himself financially. Hopefully it's going to be a move that he will not regret, considering Houston looks like they're going to be in for some difficult times for the foreseeable future.
Perhaps it's just that Houston has a climate that's more similar to Australia.
That could be it as well.
I mean, it's not Australia, but neither is Philadelphia.
That's right. But yeah, like I said, it's I think you hit it on the head before. I think this is probably a purely financial move.
Let's talk about linebacker Rayquan Mcmillan. This is a player I know well. He had played for my hapless Miami Dolphins for a few years and was one of the bright spots on the defense. A defense that wasn't very good, but he was, like I said, one of the brighter spots. And I was not happy when the Dolphins let him go to the Raiders, and now he's leaving the Raiders, and of course he will come back and haunt my Dolphins because he is now with New England. What do you think of this move for Rayquan Mcmillan? If there's somebody that can get something out of a linebacker, it's Bill Belichick.
You got it. That's exactly it. I think this is I may be mistaken. I don't believe that the terms have been disclosed about the deal that Rayquan Mcmillan signed with New England. I think at this stage of his career, to be on his third team. Now, granted, he didn't make the trade from Miami to Las Vegas. That was something that was kind of just part of the business. But I think he's probably looking at an opportunity to go play for a traditionally winning franchise, by a coach who, let's face it, is arguably the best coach in NFL history. So I think he's looking at this is a team that, they struggled in 2020, but Bill Belichick has been on a spending spree, and I think he looks at it as an opportunity to get himself into a winning environment.
Yeah, it's I think it's a good move for Rayquan. I don't have to like it, though.
Oh, nobody says you have to like it.
I personally don't have to like it, and you can't make me, and I'm not going to. All right, let's talk about a reunion. Curtis Samuel leaving the Carolina Panthers to go to the Washington football team. Chip, are we going to get a name for the Washington football team?
I believe, maybe I'm mistaken, I thought I saw that Washington is not going to announce a new team nickname for the 2021 season, but for the 2022 season. That I may be mistaken. I thought I'd read that online. So if I am proven incorrect, so be it. But this was one that I know that he has. It's a good financial deal. I was kind of surprised that he went there. I realized that he and Terry McLaurin, obviously teammates when they were together.
That's what I was alluding to with the reunion.
Yeah. That that they kind of on social media have said, "Oh, we used to talk about this," but Washington, I have tremendous respect for Ron Rivera, but I'm not sure what's going on there organizationally with Washington. I hope that Curtis Samuel doesn't wind up regretting making this decision. Maybe I'm being harsh.
Well, I can give you 34.5 million reasons why he likes this move.
Yeah, like I said, I think it makes complete financial sense. I just don't know, and maybe Washington, the way that they described, besides the lucrative contract, they described how they're going to use him in the offense because Terry McLaurin's been flourishing there. I mean, Washington needs to get a new quarterback. Everything that happened with Dwayne Haskins has been well documented, but I'm kind of curious to see how Curtis Samuel does for the Washington football team.
I am as well, and it will be fun to watch him and McLaurin. And now when the ball's in the air that you've got two possibilities that a Buckeye will be on the other end of it when you watch the Washington football team. A little bit annoyed that it's taken 2 years to think of a new name.
Yeah, I think they're trying to be as creative as possible, but there's a lot of
Are they doing market research? Is that what they're doing?
All I know is, I mean, there's so many negative stories of off the field issues within that organization that, you know, it would behoove them to come up with a new nickname to try and get something positive. So, yeah, I'm not sure why it's taking so long to come up with a new name.
Should have just put a potato on the side of their helmet and stayed with the Redskins, and now it's a potato, the Redskin potato.
I don't think that's what they're going for.
No, that's probably not where it's not where they're going to end up. No, that's not what they're circling. All right, so here's another reunion. Carlos Hyde leaving the Seattle Seahawks to rejoin one Urban Meyer in Jacksonville. 2 years, $6 million. Carlos El Guapo going to Jacksonville, becoming a Jaguar, so that he can watch Trevor Lawrence run the ball on 3rd and 2 and 4th and 1.
Yeah, and this is somewhat surprising because Carlos Hyde had played for Jacksonville previously. I realize a completely different regime. And, you know, let's face it, you know, he's had kind of, like a, unique NFL career in the sense of going from team to team. I think this will bear watching to see how Urban Meyer uses Carlos Hyde, because unfortunately in the life of an NFL running back, I mean, Carlos Hyde is starting to kind of get up there, like a lot of the, he's still a young man, don't get me wrong, but in terms of the eyes of NFL talent evaluators, he's starting to kind of show his age.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at what he's making as compared to what Curtis Samuel's making, you kind of can see that the value isn't quite where it was a few years ago. Different positions, obviously, but still $3 million a year for a running back. He's not going to be the guy, I would think, but he'll be a guy and a good guy, and you need more than one in today's NFL. You need multiple guys. Certainly he's a guy that Urban Meyer knows what he can do. He knows him well. But you got to roll damn Hyde if you're going to be Urban Meyer. You can't be can't be having Trevor carry the ball on short yardage situations.
No, I don't think you want that, and I definitely believe that this is also kind of a signing. I realize that Urban Meyer doesn't have complete control over the football operations, but I suspect that Urban Meyer looks at Carlos Hyde as somebody who not necessarily knows the offense per se, but knows kind of the mindset that Urban Meyer is trying to develop and build within Jacksonville's locker room. So I think it kind of fulfills, like you said, that Carlos Hyde will be a guy in the offense, but probably more importantly, help Urban Meyer as he tries to remake that locker room.
All right, it pains me to talk about the next two because my Miami Dolphins really needed help on the offensive line, especially the center position. They lost their center and didn't have a great center to begin with, I don't think. I mean, didn't have a great season. But, the line play in Miami was pretty bad, I thought, the last several years. But they needed a center, and the best center in the league, for my money, is a guy who was in Green Bay. Pretty good situation there, Corey Linsley. But he leaves Green Bay. The Packers do not hang on to him. And he goes to the LA Chargers, signing a 5-year, $62.5 million deal. I really would have liked to have seen him in South Florida, but he is going to the other coast. A good deal for Corey Linsley. That's an up-and-coming team, and they... that team that it seems like a lot of players want to go to.
Great team, great deal, I should say, for Corey Linsley. Like you said, in the sense that it's an up and coming team. He gets to be playing in warm weather after playing for the Green Bay Packers. This is one of these moves. I realize, and I can feel the pain and disappointment in your voice about Miami not signing him. This falls under that category for me of I'm surprised that Green Bay did not re-sign Corey Linsley.
Yeah.
Now, again, without being knowledgeable about the salary cap situation for the Green Bay Packers, I mean, I might be completely, and that's a lucrative deal. I'm happy for Corey Linsley. I'm sure that they probably would have liked to have kept him, but maybe financially they couldn't make a go of it.
Yeah, that's possible. The other thing about Corey Linsley not being in Green Bay anymore, see, my wife's family, they're big Green Bay Packers fans, so I've kind of adopted them as a secondary team, and I like to watch them, and I tweet about them. And then Corey Linsley's wife and father always like my tweets and retweet them and stuff. So I'm going to miss that because I don't like the Chargers at all. I have a deep-seated anger leftover from that AFC playoff game between the Dolphins and Chargers, in which, I guess it will always be known as the Kellen Winslow game, but, it's the game where the Chargers had the big lead and the Dolphins got back in it with the hook and ladder play that you see on like every major highlight film from NFL history, and the Dolphins had chances to win that game and got a field goal blocked and then lost on a field goal. So deep anger for Dan Fouts, deep anger for Kellen Winslow, and for Ralph Benershka in my household. But Corey's going to play for them, and they're in a different city now, but there's still those damn Chargers.
To be bringing up Ralph Benershka, that's a name I highly doubt you will hear that name being mentioned by any of the other vaunted podcasts on the Buckeye Scoop network, except Silver Bullets podcast.
I challenge the other BuckeyeScoop.com podcasts to discuss Ralph Benershka on their show. It's a challenge.
And in the context of, because I can still see the hook and ladder working to perfection with Duriel Harris.
Yeah, that was maybe top 5 NFL plays of all time in my book. But of course, I'm biased. But it would have meant a lot more had that led to a comeback victory rather than just a comeback loss anyway. But good luck to Corey out in L.A., but not too much luck because I just don't like those Chargers. The other guy who I thought maybe the Dolphins should have picked up last year, or when he became available from the Vikings, was Pat Elfline, who ended up playing for the Jets. He now goes to Carolina, 3 years for $13.5 million. Elfline, I think, still a very useful starting caliber offensive lineman in the NFL, and he is now going to Carolina.
His versatility is something that I think had to have been attractive to not just Carolina but other teams, because you and I remember he was able to play not only at coming in, I think he could play at center, he can play at either of the guard positions. I'm happy for him because I think Carolina is definitely one of those teams that's on the upswing. I'm not sure, for example, how many other teams that he looked at, because I think that was one of those early signings. I mean, NFL free agency, it's one of those weird things where you have legal tampering prior to the actual official signings and things like that. And I seem to recall Pat Elfline was pretty much one of the first names off the board when the NFL free agency began.
Yeah, Elfline, he always struck me as a guy who he could play guard, he could play center. I liked him as a guard at Ohio State before he moved inside, and I thought he was equally effective at both positions. I wasn't absolutely sure he could play center, but I think at his size especially, I think he held up very well in the middle of that line at Ohio State, and I think he's acquitted himself in the NFL as well. I'm just glad he's not on the stinking Jets anymore.
I think Pat Elfline would agree. He's glad he's not on the stinking Jets anymore either.
Yeah, but they might be about to get a good quarterback, in the draft. Never know.
We shall see.
All right, that's all I have for the Ohio State free agency so far. Do you have anything else? Anything come in today?
Not that I saw. I mean, I guess the only thing that I would add has nothing to do with necessarily the players. Urban Meyer, I know that we talked about Jacksonville signing Carlos Hyde. Urban Meyer kind of raised some eyebrows by, in essence saying that he doesn't like NFL free agency, like he thinks it's bad business because to kind of, the idea that you're going to be spending all this money on these players without really getting to know them as people, like what kind of work ethic they have. And I think it's much ado about nothing. I think you're talking about a guy who has made his coaching career exclusively at the collegiate level, who is very, very familiar and comfortable within a recruiting setting. And the idea that, all right, you're making your decisions based on, when it comes to these players that, that they can play, but, where does it fit salary wise? I don't think he said anything that a lot of other coaches privately don't necessarily agree with. I mean, I'm sure you can't tell me that Bill Belichick is thrilled to have to, shell out money for people that are, in his estimation, probably are, just basically like mercenaries. So, I think, any of the critique of Urban Meyer, it's shame on Urban Meyer for saying it's bad business. I think they're misunderstanding. He just basically would like to get to know these people before necessarily investing in them, for their NFL careers.
Well, there is a certain amount of recruiting that you can do in the NFL just as you can in college football. So maybe he needs to go back and put his recruiting shoes back on and, make the phone calls and do some visits. And I don't know how they do things in the NFL, but I think they probably have a lot fewer rules about contact if someone's a free agent.
I agree. I think, if anything, with everything that's going on in the world with coronavirus, I think that kind of limited any kind of get to know you opportunities that,
sure.
I remember back in the day that NFL free agents, before there was any kind of legal tampering period, that was quite common, is that players, that were free agents would be coming, kind of, I don't want to call it like a tour, but on a visit. I'm going to go to Miami, and I'm going to go to Green Bay, and I'm going to go to Cleveland, and then I'm going to, after I've gone to these visits, I'm going to make my determination. Nowadays, like I said, with the legal tampering period, a lot of the deals are pretty much done before the official signing period takes place. And I don't know what kind of recruiting Urban Meyer could do when you have, you do have salary cap restrictions, and you also, the agents are the ones that are kind of making these calls on behalf of their clients.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, Urban Meyer's been around a little while. He knows a lot of coaches. He knows where all these guys played. Chances are he knows their college coaches. He could probably get a pretty good idea what they're like by making a few phone calls to, some people that he trusts and has worked with in the past.
Oh, I agree. I think it's going to be interesting to see how active between now and the NFL draft Jacksonville is going to be on the free agency side of things, because they do have a lot of money. They do have a significant number of draft choices besides that top pick. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of a roster Urban Meyer and his coaches develop between now and the start of the NFL season.
Yeah, nobody told Herbs that he had to go be an NFL coach. This is part of it, so he's going to have to suck it up and deal with this part of the game.
Yeah, I like it's going to be. He's assembled a number of familiar coaches, like Charlie Strong, Chris Ash, that are familiar to the college game. I genuinely, I believe, on the NFL side, that he's going to have to learn to defer to his coordinators, as well as some of the other NFL more experienced NFL coaches, to kind of get a feel for how the pro game is run versus what he's very familiar with on the college side.
I'm just scrolling through these a little bit. It looks like Jonathan Hankins re-signed with the Raiders for a 1-year deal. So there's that. So good for Big Hank, still having a job in the NFL. what I wanted to see is I was kind of surprised, maybe not shocked because of the way his arm looked at the end of the season, but a little surprised that that Drew Brees has hung up his spikes and is retiring. But not shocked at that. But that throws into some question because there's a lot of Buckeyes in New Orleans, and are they going to want to hang around? For whatever's next. I mean, is Jameis Winston going to be the guy? Is it are they going to turn it over to their fullback / tight end / quarterback / wide receiver? What are they going to do in New Orleans, and how's that going to play out over the next few years in terms of how players view that team and that city and whether or not they want to go there as a destination?
Well, the thing is, when it comes to Drew Brees, and congratulations on a tremendous career, at this stage, when it came to with Drew Brees, I realized we were talking about how strange it was to see Tom Brady in a different uniform after so many years with the New England Patriots. That being said, Drew Brees, being at his age, in his early 40s, leaving the game relatively healthy, I think that he's already signed up with NBC Sports as an analyst.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the Ohio State Buckeyes that are on that roster. Yeah, they might, when or if the opportunity presents itself to go elsewhere, and they might consider it. But I also believe that that organization, that Sean Payton has kind of established himself as one of the best coaches in the NFL. That, we don't know, is it going to be Jameis Winston? Is it going to be Taysom Hill?
Yeah.
But we'll see. I think New Orleans will definitely try and do what they can to remain competitive within the NFL landscape.
Indeed. All right, so that'll wrap up our conversation, Chip, about the Buckeyes in the NFL, where they're going, the free agents, where they've gone, I should say, and I think it's great to talk about this because when you talk about this, what you're really saying is there's a lot of Buckeyes in the NFL, and there's a lot of them that didn't move because they're some of them are younger guys and they're still in their earlier contracts, like the Bosas, and some of them are still with the same teams because their teams don't want to let them go. So it's really a testament to what this, what the Ohio State University has done in terms of developing guys for the next level. Obviously they get top-notch recruits, so they've already got a leg up there. These are kids that are coming to Ohio State because they have a very good chance of making it to the NFL, and then they're developed. They know they're going to get the development they need to make it to take that next step to become pros. And there's hardly any games that you could watch in the NFL where you can say there's no Buckeyes to watch on this team. There's almost every team has, at least a couple.
It's certainly exciting, and Ohio State, to their credit, they capitalize on news of, as we were discussing, NFL free agency, as well as we talked about the NFL draft. That will be in a little over a month, where Mark Pantoni and his creative staff always like to point out when players are picked and kind of what the commensurate contract value of those selections means, and get that out on social media. So any recruits coming up, kind of to give them something to ponder about how Ohio State could really help them with their football future.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to tour the Woody Hayes facility a few years ago. I was able to go to this this gold pants fundraiser thing, and it was at the Woody, and it was really cool to see this entire section of the wall in one area of the Woody that was just dedicated to the guys in the NFL, and it was kept very current. I mean, there were very up-to-date photos of guys and their, the teams they were with, and some very iconic pictures. I think there was Santonio Holmes's, game-winning Super Bowl touchdown was one of the photos and stuff like that. So it's really cool. It's obviously a selling point of the program. Look at all of these folks and look what they passed through this facility, and now they're where you want to be. It's got to make an incredible impression on a teenage kid who's trying to figure out where he wants to play college football.
Undoubtedly, because it's the kind of thing where, I mean, we're old enough to remember back in the day when Ohio State would only be on television a few times in a given year,
Mm-hmm.
and now every game Ohio State's televised. Well, let's face it, it doesn't matter, when you talk about, we joke about Maction and other things, but I mean, college football is televised. If you want to find a game, chances are you'll be able to find one. So I think Ohio State is doing the right thing by trying to shine light, if you will, on, as I said, the players who have capitalized on their NFL success, with free agency, as well as like the players who are going to be selected in the NFL draft.
Exactly. All right, Chip, that's all that I have planned for this week. Do you have anything else that you wanted to discuss before we adjourn for another couple of weeks?
No, I'm good. I mean, if anything, I'm excited that Ohio State spring football is back. It's still kind of vague in terms of, I believe that it's going to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, in terms of like the practice sessions. Not a lot of news, not a lot of information, but kind of the information that we do get, happy to share. I'm excited that kind of we talked earlier about the new jerseys. Who's going to be wearing what numbers this spring. And hopefully get some more positive news about Ohio State football from practice reports between now and the spring game.
Indeed. And, the thing about doing these every 2 weeks, Chip, is that before you know it, we'll be talking about the spring game. It's not that far off in the distance.
It isn't. I'm excited.
And you and I will have our second vaccination shot by then.
That's correct. Yeah. The nice thing about, that's the thing when we talk about, all of the positive news, it's going to be one of these things where, more than likely fans are not going to be in the stands for the Ohio State spring game, but the strong possibility that fans will be in the stands, next fall. That's the kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's like it's just kind of lining up that way.
How about if we petition the Ohio State University and say, look, if we bring our vaccination card, can we get into the spring game?
I'll tell you what, Gene Smith, I think I think he's going to still push us to the back of the line. I think the players' families and the coaches' families, I think they're still going to get precedence over people like you and me.
I'm not too proud to sit in C-Deck, Chip. In fact, I like it up there.
Like I said, it's like, I think beggars can't be choosers. I think we'll take whatever we can get.
I mean, I've been reading about the fact that now I can get a free Krispy Kreme donut for the rest of the year every day if I want one because I got the vaccination. But why not also let's open that up. If you get the vaccination, you get vaccinated, you can get into sporting events and stuff.
Well, I didn't know anything about any kind of free Krispy Kreme donut. I just okay.
Look up Krispy Kreme, free Krispy Kreme COVID vaccination, and you'll find it on Google. I don't know if it's just here. Maybe it's just here. Okay. Maybe it's everywhere. I don't know. But I was reading about it today. I was pretty excited. Although I don't really live near a Krispy Kreme, but there's one that's not that far from work, so I guess I could make the trip.
Yeah. Like I said, it's like I didn't hear anything about that in Ohio, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Well, I hope it's everywhere for your sake, because I know you've already got your first one. And if it's a 2-shot deal, you don't have to wait for the second shot to start enjoying your donuts.
No, I don't.
You can start right away. Yeah, you don't have to wait to enjoy your free ones, is what I'm saying. Obviously, you don't have to wait to enjoy your donuts. Oh, man. All right. On that note, I think we're done here. I think that'll do it for this installment of the Silver Bullets podcast. Chip, where can folks find you on the internet? Why don't we give them a reminder?
Yeah, on Twitter, I can be found at Chip Minnich. Last name is spelled Minnich. And besides podcasting with Michael, I'm also a contributor to Elfline Sports.
All right, you can find me also on Twitter at Mike36Fan. You can find me at BuckeyeScoop.com, although I generally just write during the season, the grumpy old Buckeye column. And if you like music, you want to check out my newsletter, I've got this Substack newsletter free. You can sign up for it, and it's called Michael's Record Collection. So just go to Substack.com, type in Michael's Record Collection. You can sign right up, get that for free, and all kinds of fun stories in there. So that's if you like tunes. And if you're, I know, Chip, you like tunes.
I do, and I'm envious of your new turntable that you were showing on social media.
I had to put the record back in Michael's Record Collection.
And you, solid, solid move there.
Yeah, it's been fun. I'm not really interested in recreating my, 1,500 CD titles on vinyl. I don't really need that many records. I just want some records to enjoy, and the ones that I'm going to play. I've got these hard set rules. I have to want to play it. It's got to be something I really enjoy, and I'm not going to go crazy and build a wall of vinyl like, some of these crazy people you see on YouTube. There's some crazy record collections on YouTube.
That's a financial investment right there.
It is. They're too expensive. When we were kids, you buy them for $7-8. Now it's $30-$35 for a new one sometimes. It's crazy. It's definitely, I'm very happy that now I know what I'm doing. When I was a kid, I had no idea. And I was like, everybody says vinyl is so great, but I didn't think it sounded all that good. Well, that's because I wasn't taking care of my records. I had a crappy record player, and it wasn't nothing special. I was ruining my records every time I played them. So I was happy to move over to digital, but now I'm actually seeing what everybody's talking about, because now I do clean my records, and I do take care of the stylus, and I do have a good record player that's got a counterbalance and anti-skating and all this stuff. So it does make a difference. It's pretty cool. I went out and got a couple of those titles that I had when I was a kid, and it's amazing how good they sound when they are clean and new, and you're taking care of them. It makes a big difference.
Happy for you.
All right, so that'll do it for this edition of the Silver Bullets podcast. Please check out all of the other great shows at Buckeye Scoop, the Buckeye Scoop Radio Network, of course, Buckeye Weekly with Tom Orr and Tony Gerdeman. Do you think Tony grinds his teeth every time I say Tom's name first?
That's a fair question. That's a good question.
I'll start mixing it up. Tom, of course, also is on the the Morning Scoop. There's the Scoop World Order. There's the Buckeye Sloopcast. There's Banks in the Give. There's all kinds of great shows. There's something for everybody. So check those all out. And, of course, go to BuckeyeScoop.com. And if you don't already have an insider subscription, it's not expensive. It's well worth it. Not a single person has said, "Oh, this is crap," and it's not worth the investment. Everybody that takes the plunge is usually very, very happy they did. And when you can get people on social media to all agree that something's good, I think that's quite an accomplishment. So sign up for Buckeye Scoop.
Can't endorse it enough.
All right. We will be back in 2 weeks. Till then, everybody stay safe, and we will sign off the way we always do by saying, Go Bucks!
Go Bucks!